Hi, welcome to Rise and Shine with Alissa. I am your hostess with the mostess, and I have with me today Machen MacDonald. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Alissa.
Lake Tahoe, love that. Well, Machen, my dear friend, I have met in the Zoomiverse in some business networking channels, and I was really impressed with his ability to hold court and to lovingly facilitate a room full of many people. And I wanted to share him with you all today because the purpose here in Rise and Shine is to be able to be in the room where it happens, hear the uncommon conversations about how people are behaving in their life, in their business, what's occurring now, because in this new normal, which isn't very normal, we're all gifted the opportunity to reinvent and to look at things that we otherwise would have held as given, to be able to create the next new iteration of who we're becoming. Business, personal, it's all on the table here. So Mach, thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Are you by Lake Tahoe?
We are an hour outside of Lake Tahoe in the Sierra foothills, town of Grass Valley, California.
Oof. Just the sound of a grassy valley is like one of my, there's a place where I go in meditation. But in the meantime, I want to just first, applaud you for your ability to hold court in that meeting facilitation. I was like, oh, I see a kindred soul here. But also, I want to let everybody know, you are a best-selling author, a coach for 20 plus years, which is no small feat, imbuing the world with a sense of evolution and growth. And so I'm really happy to have you here and ask you, kind of some of these setup questions around like, who are you and what are you up to in this world?
Boy, I think it may sound cliche, but really I think I'm a guide. And I do that by what I call ad-libbing. And ad-lib is an acronym for Advancing Divine Love in Business. I believe business should be a blessing to our life, but not our life, right? And I work with a lot of CEOs, a lot of sales professionals, entrepreneurs, and they tend to get a bit caught up in business. And there's a saying that I've heard that says, people will work to avoid doing their work. So I kind of get people to get back into who they are and find themselves, grow, and bring a better version of that into the workplace.
Mm-hmm. And how does the Machen who you are
Yeah.
inform the Machen who is the coach and the guide?
Um, I think it's just, and again, this is maybe an overused word, but it's authenticity, right? If you take the word authenticity or authentic, the root is also in author or authority, right? So what goes on inside here, we all have those different critical voices. The trick is to not get sucked into the trance of those voices, right? And to recognize that we all have this wise self in us that got us here to this stage of our life. And it kind of had to do some battle with these other voices or other parts of us. So one of the things that I have to work on, just like everybody else on planet Earth, is managing all that. And I've found great ways to, move through it quickly, play with it, not be threatened by it, recognize it. And I help other people do that so that they can get into this posture sooner rather than later and expand those moments of staying in that posture.
Mm-hmm. Do you find, I know for myself too, that getting in alignment or figuring out where it is that you want to be is sometimes a challenge in and of itself. I was just having a conversation with my husband a couple of days ago where, we're workshopping and defining what is next and where we each as
Mm,
individuals want to go and
yeah.
where our family is heading and where our business is heading. Because if you don't know, he and I invest in real estate together, and then he's got a passion for dogs, so he's got American bullies. Anyhow, long story short, asking him, what do you want? It's almost like, well, I want a good life, and I want my family to have good lives. But what does that really mean? How do you know in
Yeah.
your alignment where that is? Can you
Yeah.
share with us, kind of some of how you do that?
Yeah. That's brilliantly said. You know, what I find with most people is they only have two challenges or two problems. One is they know what they want, but they don't know how to get it. Or number two, they don't know what they want, really. Right. So when, as you know, in my coaching practice, I'll ask a lot of people, you know, well, what'd you come here to get? What do you want? And they'll tell me all the stuff they don't want in their life.
Right. I
Like,
know.
okay, but tell me what you want, you know, and then oftentimes they'll go to goals or achievements that are really kind of a means versus an end, right? I want to make this much. I want the promotion. I want to move here. I want a second home, those things. And it's okay, great. And if you got that, or if you had that right now, how would you feel? Oh my gosh, it'd be great. Da, 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 da. And I ask them, notice where in your body does that light you up? Give it a sense, give it a shape or a color, or maybe even a sound, right? Because a lot of times people don't get into that side of who they are, to really just things that we can't put words to, and just notice it and notice that it's part of us. And how do we expand that? So it really comes down to it's energy. You know, it's all energy. They say emotion or emotion is energy in motion. So our emotion is a great dashboard or gauge on the dashboard to let us know, are we heading in the right direction or not? So
Mm,
if we're feeling all confungled for whatever reason, that's a great indication. That's our dashboard telling us you're not in alignment. You're
mm.
not in
So
integrity with yourself.
for me, that shows up as, like, confusion, cloudy thinking.
Oh yeah.
I notice that many people feel like they get that frustration, uh, and that insight I think that you said was brilliant about, how do you feel when you think about the thing you say you want, and it rings true for you because there's that sense of, excitement, or if there's that sound that you keep hearing going off in your head, like, that maybe it's the New York Stock Exchange morning bell. I'm like, oh,
Mm,
well, you belong trading,
yeah.
but that sense around feeling
Yeah.
what's present when you're thinking. I think marrying those two senses, and one is a um, not tangible sense, like great thinking is beyond the actual tactical physical sensations.
Mhm.
And for me, I've noticed the feeling of joy. When I feel excited and I feel like I can feel my heart beating without putting my hand here, those are when I know that those things are aligned for me. And I've over the years learned to hone that sense because I couldn't understand when I was making decisions from, I'm just going to do this. I got more things to be about,
No, I totally get that. You know, it's I always say it like this: I'm either riding the wave, I'm paddling like hell to catch it, or I'm getting crushed by it. Right? Life is a bunch of heroes' journeys. It's a bunch of cycles, and you know, I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody to expect that you'll just always be riding the wave. Life is great. It's, you know, just this. If you're struggling or confungled, you know, you're doing something wrong. I'm not saying that at all, because that's not life, right? We're going to have challenges, but the trick is like the when we can realize that, you know what, this thing called life is hard. Now what? Right? And from that point, okay, how do I get stronger, better, faster with that? And to your point, you know, when you say you feel that excitement, that chest thumping and your heart thumping in your chest and all that, you've framed that sensation in your body to mean excitement. And I bet we could find somebody that might feel angst or some other feeling. Panic is the same physiology going on in their body, but they've given it a different meaning, and they're not knowing how to work with it. It's all information for us. It's, you know, we're primal creatures. Everything out there is a tiger in the grass to us, right? In our primal code. But we've got to rise above that and say, you know, that was just somebody saying no to my offer. That wasn't a tiger in the grass. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to get kicked out of the tribe. So putting things in relation to the world that we're currently in, versus going unconscious, like you said, sometimes you get this fog or confusion. Well, that's oftentimes just our ego part of our body, right? Creating a sensation to keep the status quo. Because if we're confused and in a fog, we're not going to move forward. We're not going to venture out into the grass. We're going to stay where it's safe. But we've rationalized why to stay put, right? And if you take the word rationalize and you break it in two, it's rational lies that we tell ourselves, right? So,
So for those of us left brain folks out there, sometimes your brain is absolutely a freaking liar.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, right? It's a good one of my mentors. I don't know him personally, but I consider him a mentor just because I love his way and his writings and so forth. Is David Allen, who wrote the book Getting Things Done. And he's all about just really watching the mind and noticing what shows up. And one of the things that he says is the more intelligent you are, the easier it is to freak yourself out.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, amen to that, because our intellectual self can create maps and destroy dreams very quickly
Yeah.
just to keep us safe. And, I've ever heard the expression, what you're thinking about or what you believe you're thinking about is only the top of the iceberg, that 10%. The rest of it is emotional things. And that 10% justifies what's going on under the
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah.
So rational lies, like I'm going to just write that down right now because, I do come across a lot of intelligent people who are super stuck and they cannot see, and I have been there, we cannot see how we're in our own way until we get someone else's perspective, or we allow
Mhm.
ourselves to identify with someone else and trust them enough to help us guide our way through that fog or that resistance. I learned the word resistance about 10 years ago and I was like, what what
Mm.
is that? What is resistance? You're either doing something or you're not. But I was thinking of it in a very physics sense of the word of, action and, matter, but resistance
Mhm.
emotionally or resistance showing up intellectually. These
Yeah.
are the stories that we tell ourselves that keep us on the path that we're on, or the path that we believe based on our belief structure will
Yeah.
keep us safe. So I had someone on here a couple weeks ago, Angela Johnson, who
Mm.
talked about trauma and how it doesn't have to be this huge catastrophic traumatic event, but that our little traumas are throughout our upbringing are what kind of forms those limiting beliefs. And sometimes we don't even recognize that they're operating at all. They're so unconscious. And the feeling of safety is those little traumas have created a sense of what is safe and what is not. And that is that resistance barrier that
Yeah.
kind of keeps us from transcending. Even though, how many times have you, set a huge goal and then run the other way screaming because you're like, woo, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, I know you had mentioned in our pre-production, you're the father of three and,
Yeah.
you must be doing something right. They're not in jumpsuits. So, orange jumpsuits. So how does this show up in your parenting?
Um, oh man, that's a great question. I think how it shows up, or at least how my philosophy around parenting, and my kids are adults now, or at least my oldest two are. My youngest one, she's 19. That's an adult. Um, in the beginning when they were young, it was, and I didn't, practice this perfectly by any stretch. I'm a practicing parent like everybody else, and you know, uh, but it was really about letting them struggle, letting them find their way. And it's interesting because my wife parents a bit differently. She kind of comes into the rescue. She'd see, our 2-year old or 3-year old struggling with a puzzle, and she'd rush in to, kind of show them the piece and where it goes. And I'm kind of like, no, 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 let them get frustrated. Because I think the word frustration, by the way, it's the gateway to learning, right?
Mm,
And if you look at frustration, inside the word are the letters F, U, and N, right? So we have to find the fun in the frustration. So what I would do with my kids is when they got frustrated, I would like celebrate with them. Like, dude, this is so cool. You're right on the brink of figuring this out. And he'd get excited or she'd get excited. And it was like, keep going. And they get maybe even more frustrated. I'm like, this is going to be great, and just reframing that situation so that now in their adult lives, when something doesn't go according to how they'd like it to go, it's not it's a, okay, this is great because right around the corner is the breakthrough. And that serves them well. And it serves me well, serves my clients well.
Yeah, aren't there so many lessons from parenting that
Oh,
translate into client work?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I found that parenting my kids when they were young, I realized that I had a whole structure of beliefs that were based on stuff I didn't really actually believe.
Yeah.
And so when I started homeschooling with them, I was as much unlearning some of those ways of thinking as I was watching and listening for how they would naturally solve things,
Yeah.
or how they would go about problem solving together as siblings. And it
Yeah.
taught me so much because that frustration in my parenting led me to see, okay, so they're little entrepreneurs and they're seeking to close the value gap. They see where they are and they see where they want to go, and they're working it out live.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
some of the best times in my life to be able to harvest life lessons
Yeah.
and lessons about, creating strategy, because it's all about, I always say it's all about the relationships in life, whether we're in business or we're out there, creating community or inside of our family structures, that all those lessons apply kind of sort of everywhere.
Yeah. Oh,
Relationships are what run the show.
yeah, and that's the boy, you really nailed it. It's about relationship, right? Relationship with ourself, relationship with others, and we homeschooled as well. My wife, I should say, my wife homeschooled. She's the one that really mastered that and did that for our kids. But to that point, it was about following the energy. Where does we could watch the kids light up when they were doing something that was on purpose for them. And, we had them try all kinds of different things, and there were things that they didn't light up. Well, that's information, right? We can put that on the back burner. Let them stay in that lit up place, right? That's where they're open to the universe.
Yeah.
And then from there, the relationship. And one of the things with homeschooling too, everybody says, oh, well, what about socialization? It's like, it's the greatest thing for socialization, right? You're not dealing with people of your own age, you're dealing with people all over the spectrum. And to that point, all three of our kids have learned to relate to anybody. They can walk into any room, carry on a conversation with anybody about anything. Not that they're subject matter experts about it, but they know how to engage in what I call catalytic inquiry, right? Where they can ask really good, interesting questions and keep the conversation going. And the other person's getting much out of the conversation as well. And
Mm.
that's that relationship. So it's just following the energy and then helping people. By the way, most of the people that I coach, like C-suite people, it comes down to they don't know how to communicate,
There
right?
it
And
is.
communication is simply just asking for what you need in a clean way and listening for what other people need and help them get the needs met. That
Amen.
simple.
Amen. Listen, I learned that lesson very early. See, my dad was an immigrant who came to this country when he was 8 years old, but he learned Italian first. So, like, all of his wiring was almost backwards. Adjective and noun is like reversed in the Latin
Mhm.
languages. So he would tell us all sorts of stuff to get to the point.
Yeah.
And when he was trying to get something, his power of analogy just really sucked. But God rest his soul. It's almost 4 years he's gone now. But
Wow.
I remembered seeing that value gap and then knowing, okay, but I hear his intent. I hear where he's trying to go. And so part of the skill set that I learned from a very young age was to translate energy into language. And
Yeah.
so the pinnacle of this was when we took a family trip to go whitewater rafting. And he's always the boss. He built a business. He was the head of the house. But he couldn't be the coxswain. He couldn't be the one telling us paddle left, paddle right, back right, whatever. And I fired him. I said, Dad, move over. I'm coming in. Thankfully, my mom backed me up, or else that would have gone very differently. But I was able to communicate how I wanted people to move with succinct language. And it
Yeah.
wound up, we were in the rapids right after that. And we navigated up and around like two freaking boulders and like came
Mm,
down this awesome cascade. And he had a really great time, but we had to put the strength, like he needed to be the rudder, not the
yeah.
collar, you
Yeah.
know? And so
Yeah.
finding where people's skill sets are and putting them to use in a loving way. Like we're not all carbon copies of each other.
Right.
In this life, you know, we will advance divine love in business. I love that acronym. And so I would love to have you back here to
Mm.
have a follow-up conversation. But for now, for right now, I would love for people to know where exactly to find you, to find more, or to connect with you, to communicate with you outside of this forum.
The two best places are my website, probrilliance.com, and LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, posting and acknowledging posts of other professionals and writing. It's just kind of become a little bit of a playground. Not that I spend a ton of time there, but every day I'm on it. So if you reach out to me via that, I'll definitely connect in with you.
Right on. So high five. Thanks a million for being here with me today and for sharing yourself with the audience of entrepreneurs, real estate investors, people who are making their own way, being captains of their own
Yeah.
destiny.
Yeah.
Um, I appreciate this conversation. And for now, if you're watching this, we go live every single Monday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure you click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss another episode. We're up to really great things in 2024. So stay tuned for some more very juicy conversations.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, we will catch you on the other side. Rise and shine, be the best that you can be, and we will see you soon. Take good care.